Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going on a little journey to the top of the world. Well, as imagined by people you know centuries ago.
Oh, wow.
You, you've shared this incredible map with us.
Right.
It's Gerard Mercator's 1595 map of the Arctic, and it's a fascinating piece of cartographic history. But you know what's really cool about this map? This isn't just any old map, right? It was created by the guy who gave us the Mercator projection,
Right,
a
right.
map projection that's still used all over the world today.
Some use, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? Um, and what's really interesting is this map shows an Arctic that's wildly different from what we know today.
Yes, it's a great example of how, our understanding of the world evolves over time.
Yeah. So let's dive right into this map. What jumps out at you as the most striking difference from our modern understanding of the Arctic?
Well, the first thing that, grabs your attention is that there's no solid landmass at the North Pole.
Okay.
Instead, Mercator depicts an open sea with a large black mountain
Mm-hmm.
right at the center.
A black mountain. That's certainly not something you see on modern maps of the Arctic.
No.
What did people back then think this mountain was made of?
Well, they believed it was made of lodestone.
Lodestone.
Yes, a naturally magnetic rock. Now, lodestone was a big deal back then. It was used in compasses, and people were just beginning to understand the concept of Earth's magnetic field. So it's not surprising that they imagined this mysterious magnetic force emanating from a giant mountain of lodestone at the North Pole.
Okay, so this black mountain was like the imagined powerhouse of the planet's magnetism.
Right. Yeah.
What else is unusual about Mercator's depiction of the Arctic?
Well, surrounding this central mountain and open sea, he drew four large islands, all arranged symmetrically in a circle.
Four.
Four large islands.
Yeah.
And get this, they're separated by massive rivers that flow inwards towards the pole.
Inwards. Rivers don't flow uphill, do they?
Exactly. It seems
Yeah.
pretty counterintuitive to us now. But this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Mercator's notes actually mention that these currents were so powerful, no wind could make a ship sail against them.
Wow.
He envisioned these rivers converging at the pole, their waters disappearing into a giant whirlpool beneath that black lodestone mountain.
Okay, that's a pretty dramatic image.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, where did he get these ideas from? I mean, he wasn't just making this stuff up out of thin air, was he?
Of course not. He was a meticulous cartographer, drawing on the best sources available to him. But you have to remember that during Mercator's time, the Arctic was still largely a realm of myth and legend.
So he was piecing together this picture of the Arctic using a combination of traveler's tales, ancient myths, and whatever limited exploration data was available at the time.
Precisely. One source he specifically mentions is the Inventio Fortunata, a 14th century travelogue. That describes an English friar who supposedly journeyed to these mysterious Arctic islands.
An English friar.
Yes. Now, we don't know how much of that travelogue was truth versus embellishment, but it clearly influenced Mercator's vision.
Wow. It's fascinating to see how those stories, combined with limited exploration, shaped his understanding of the Arctic. But he also had access to reports from contemporary explorers like Frobisher and Davis Ravis.
Right.
They actually sailed in the Arctic.
You're right, and those explorers did report encountering strong northward currents. It's likely their observations contributed to his idea of these powerful inward-flowing rivers, even though they interpreted those currents differently.
I'm looking at the map now, and there's a detail that's really intriguing.
Oh.
The name California appears, but it's placed way up north on the American landmass,
Oh, right.
nowhere near where California actually is.
Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it?
Right.
And this wasn't even the first time the name California appeared on a map. But its placement on Mercator's map is so unusual, given what we know today.
It makes you wonder what he thought California was.
Right.
Was it an island? A peninsula, part of a vast northern continent?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really highlights how much our understanding of the world has changed since then.
So we've got this map with a lodestone mountain, inward flowing rivers, and California way up north. Did people back then take Mercator's maps seriously?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't some fringe theory. Remember, this map was created by Gerard Mercator, a giant in the field of cartography. His work was influential, and for a time, this was the prevailing view of the Arctic.
But if that was the case, how did this fantastical view of the Arctic eventually fade away? What led to a more accurate understanding of the region?
Well, exploration continued. And as more and more explorers ventured into the Arctic, they began to gather data that contradicted what Mercator had depicted.
So this map is kind of like a snapshot of a moment in time when the Arctic was still a realm of mystery and imagination.
Exactly. It's a fascinating window into how people were grappling with the unknown, piecing together a picture of the world based on limited information and a healthy dose of speculation.
So what happened when explorers started pushing further north and bringing back new information? How did that impact Mercator's map?
Well, that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep
Yeah,
dive.
I can't wait.
Stay tuned to find out how Mercator's map evolved with new discoveries and what it ultimately tells us about the nature of knowledge itself.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Okay.
it's fascinating to think about how much of what we, consider fact today might be revised by future generations.
Yeah.
We might chuckle at some of the ideas on Mercator's map, but who's to say that centuries from now, people won't be looking back at our current maps and thinking, wow, they really had it wrong.
It's humbling, isn't it? It reminds us that knowledge is always evolving and there's always more to discover. Speaking of discoveries, what were some of the specific findings that started to challenge Mercator's view of the Arctic?
One of the key turning points came with the discovery of Spitsbergen,
Spitsbergen.
an archipelago located north of Norway.
Okay.
This discovery happened not long after Mercator published his map, and it directly contradicted his depiction of 4 large islands surrounding the North Pole.
So someone actually found new land in the Arctic that wasn't on Mercator's map. That must have been a pretty big deal.
It was, and it wasn't just any random explorer who stumbled upon Spitsbergen.
Okay.
It was Willem Barents, a Dutch navigator who was searching for a northeast passage to Asia. His explorations in the late 1590s provided crucial evidence that Mercator's vision of the Arctic wasn't accurate.
Did Barents's discovery have any immediate impact on Mercator's map? I mean, was it revised or updated to reflect this new information?
It actually did. Jodocus Hondius, a Flemish cartographer who acquired the plates for Mercator's atlas, decided to incorporate this new discovery into the map.
Oh, wow.
He literally erased part of one of the 4 Arctic land masses that Mercator had depicted and inserted a depiction of Spitsbergen in its place.
So even though Mercator himself was no longer alive, his map continued to evolve as new information came to light.
That's pretty cool. It really shows that maps are never truly finished. They're always works in progress.
I agree. It's a testament to the dynamic nature of knowledge.
But it also raises an interesting question. Did Mercator actually believe everything he put on his map? Or was he just trying to present a comprehensive picture of what was known, even if it included some fantastical elements?
That's a good question. It's hard to know for sure what was going on in his head. But remember, he was renowned for his meticulous research and attention to detail.
Right.
It's unlikely he just threw things on the map randomly. He was clearly trying to synthesize a vast amount of information from ancient texts to contemporary explorers' accounts.
Right, and we have to consider the context of the time.
Yeah.
The Renaissance was a period of rediscovering classical knowledge, and there was a renewed fascination with ancient texts, some of which contained geographical descriptions that were, well, let's just say imaginative.
So you're saying that even a brilliant cartographer like Mercator was influenced by the prevailing worldview of his era?
Absolutely. It's easy to judge past ideas from our modern perspective,
Mm.
but it's important to remember that people were working with the information they had at the time. And those ideas, even if they turned out to be inaccurate, often helped to spur further exploration and discovery.
So as exploration continued and more accurate information about the Arctic became available, what happened to Mercator's vision of the region? Did it just fade away gradually?
Well, yes and no. As more expeditions ventured further north, they debunked many of the myths and legends that had informed earlier maps.
Okay.
They didn't find those 4 perfectly symmetrical islands or those inward flowing rivers.
Right.
And as for that giant lodestone mountain, well, you can guess how that turned out.
I have a feeling they didn't find any evidence of a giant magnetic mountain at the North Pole.
You're right. No giant magnetic mountain. But these explorers did make some incredible discoveries,
Yeah.
mapping out coastlines, charting ice flows, and gathering valuable data about the Arctic environment.
Wow.
And all of that new information contributed to a more realistic and nuanced understanding of the region.
So Mercator's map, while inaccurate in many ways, serves as a stepping stone for further exploration and ultimately led to a more accurate understanding of the Arctic.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like his map, even with its fantastical elements, sparked a curiosity that fueled further discovery.
Yeah.
And that's what's so exciting about studying old maps.
Yeah.
They tell a story not just about geography, but also about the evolution of knowledge and the human desire to understand the world around us.
It makes you wonder, what maps or ideas that we take for granted today might turn out to be completely wrong in the future.
That's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
After all, the journey of discovery never really ends.
On that note, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll explore some of the key takeaways from our deep dive into Mercator's Arctic and what it tells us about the nature of knowledge itself. So we spent all this time talking about Gerard Mercator's 1595 map of the Arctic
Right.
and how it really, reflects what people knew back then about the Arctic. And it's pretty amazing, how he was able to bring together all these different sources of information,
Right.
like ancient myths and travelers' tales and, the limited exploration data that was available,
Yeah.
all to try to, create this vision of the North Pole.
Right.
But of course, as more and more explorers actually went to the Arctic, the map had to be revised and, eventually a more accurate picture emerged.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how knowledge is constantly being refined, right?
Yeah.
Through, observation and exploration.
Yeah.
We kind of move from this world of speculation and imagination
Right.
to a world that's grounded in empirical evidence.
And it makes me think about how, we view maps today.
Uh-huh.
We tend to think of them as like, objective representations of reality.
Right.
But even our modern maps are based on certain assumptions and interpretations, aren't they?
You're absolutely right. No map is perfectly objective.
Right.
Every map is a selective representation of reality,
Yeah.
shaped by the choices of the cartographer. What to include, what to exclude, how to project the spherical Earth onto a flat surface. All of these decisions influence how we perceive the world.
So in a way, even our modern maps are, telling us a story.
Exactly.
Just like Mercator's map is telling a story about the Arctic back then.
Precisely. And those stories can have a really powerful impact,
Yeah.
on how we think about the world,
Yeah.
how we interact with it, and even how we make decisions about our future.
It's a little bit ironic, though, isn't it?
What's that?
Mercator's, imagined an open Arctic Sea.
Right.
And now, centuries later, we're actually seeing that happen because of climate change,
Oh, right.
but not in the way that he envisioned it.
Yeah, that is a striking irony.
Yeah.
It really highlights how human actions can have these unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And it also underscores the importance of, really understanding the interconnectedness of Earth's systems.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Mercator's Arctic mystery, what's like the main takeaway for our listeners? What do you hope they'll remember about this map and its significance?
I think the most important thing to remember is that maps are so much more than just, geographical representations.
True.
They're reflections of our knowledge, our beliefs, and even our aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
They tell stories about how we've tried to make sense of the world, and they remind us that our understanding is always evolving.
I love that. It's like a reminder to always be open to new discoveries,
Right.
and to challenge our assumptions.
Yes.
Who knows what future maps will reveal about the world? We think we know.
Exactly.
What mysteries are still out there waiting to be unraveled in the Arctic or in other parts of the world that, we think we understand?
Yeah, that's what makes exploration and discovery so exciting.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn, always another layer to uncover. And maps, whether they're ancient or modern, can serve as guides on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
They invite us to look closer, to ask questions, and to never stop exploring.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Mercator's Arctic mystery. Thanks for joining us on this journey of cartographic discovery. Until next time.